Well, thank you so much for joining us. It is that time. It's webinar time. Love this time of the week. We always love to join you and talk about subject matter that members of HFA really are curious about, want to know more about. And our subject matter today is one that is filled with confusion, and we need clarity, and we need to help you get through it. And we're going to be talking about OTT, over-the-top advertising, and this is a no miss. I'm Mark Schumacher. I'm the CEO of HFA. I want to thank you for joining us. Remember, this is recorded, so when this is all said and done, you're going to get a link. You can not only go and view it again, you can share it with anybody. Important information here that we're going to be coming through with today, and a lot of great takeaways. Also, by the way, on the right side of the screen, you have the ability to send us a question. I know when you signed up, there was the ability to do that, and a lot of people did. If you didn't, ask the question, we'll do our best to get to it. But I want to just tell you, we've had a lot of great questions already come in that are going to really help to guide our conversation. So we, as I mentioned, talking about OTT, which is of course really advertising access to streaming services. And joining us today, we have Freddie Wright. He is the Digital Director for Conquest Digital Solutions. This is their wheelhouse, so he's really the expert in residence today for this particular subject matter. And also we're joined by a couple of other really good friends of HFA. We've got Carrie Fletcher. She's the Director of Marketing with Bears Furniture based down in Florida. The Bears family, of course, has been in this business for a long, long time. And another family business is Miskelly's Furniture. And Betsy Tabor is the Director of Marketing for Miskelly. And we're glad to have the three of you here. Appreciate it very, very much. I want to point out that as I looked at, and I like to go over all of the page after page of questions that come in from the the people that are attending this webinar. It's always great to kind of get a feel for where they're going. And it was interesting that one of the largest sections was actually on what we called OTT 101. And I think we're going to get into everything relating to ROI and strategies and best practices. We're going to get into that. So I want you all to be patient with us. But I think we got to start out at square one, just to make sure that we all are using the same vocabulary. So Freddie, I'm gonna lean on you in this one, because when I look at this list of questions, it's like, how does it work? How do we get started? How do you get into live streaming advertising? Can I do it myself? All of these things. Right. Can you just give us a brief primer as to what OTT is and why it is such a big deal right now?
Right. So, yeah, it's one of those questions that we've struggled with. So some of you all may have heard me speak before with HFA, and we tried to come up with a simple solution to what OTT is. So OTT, think of it kind of as an umbrella. And then that umbrella is, video programming that's transmitted through the internet. So it's bypassing traditional cable or broadcast, what's referred to as linear distribution. And underneath that umbrella are all of the devices that it could be served on. So it could be served on your mobile device or a Roku, your Amazon Fire Stick, Apple TV, any of those things. And also falling under that would be connected TVs or smart TVs. So OTT is kind of that umbrella term, and underneath it are all of your devices, if you will.
And so Freddie, and by the way, if I'm going to ever talk about a subject matter, I'm always going to simplify it to where I can understand it. But the bottom line is this is the reach for all of us who are really into streaming, who are not, looking at the typical satellite channels or broadcast channels or cable channels. This is really tapping in to those who want to binge watch on Netflix or have programs that they want to watch on demand on Prime and things of that sort. Flat out, this is that segment, correct?
Absolutely. The only way to reach cord cutters and cord nevers, those people who have never had cable. So,
all right. So before we get into the meat of this whole thing, let me just ask our other two guests here for a second. Carrie, let me ask you a question. How long has this been on the radar, and how important is this at the moment from where you're sitting?
Oh boy, how long has it been on the radar? That's I think Freddie's more qualified to give us a number on that one, but it's
I'm talking about for you.
than
I'm just talking about from your experience. From
my experience, 3 or 4 years. This has been a space that I've been playing in. So it's personally my own viewing habits. It's been longer than that, but the advertising portion of it, 3 or 4 years I've been in this.
Okay, so and I'm assuming that it has really picked up steam, obviously in the last 2 years in particular, yes?
For a lot of reasons, yes, and we can talk about that more later. But absolutely, my experience with it as a viewer has led me to understand more as an advertiser how important this is and how great this is.
There's takeaway number one. I think we would all agree is that be a consumer of it before you try to become an expert at buying into OTT. That goes without saying. Betsy, what about y'all? Has this been a something that's taking on more and more importance from your marketing seat?
It has, and I came from a traditional media background, and so this was not something I wanted to jump into. It was something I had to jump into. Traditional TV, or linear TV as they call it now, is losing so many people. And we actually, personally, we cut the cord a long time ago. My husband's in IT, so we're kind of early adopters about stuff like that. And we cut the cord a long time ago. And I would see advertisers and I would think, how did they get there? How did they get there? Why can't I get Miss Kelly there? And so I knew it was something I had to do. And so on my own, I kind of set out and tried to learn it on my own. But, it's kind of like the old VHS beta, you just, which is going to play out as the final thing. I mean, I was around when cable started and nobody knew what cable was going to do. But one thing I knew, I really felt, kind of like Carrie, because of my own personal use, I knew this was here to stay. This was not going to go away. But what is still, I think, evolving is how you buy it and how you measure it. Those are the things that I think are still up in the air.
I chuckle, and Freddie, you're probably way too young, unfortunately. I'm just chuckling because the whole beta VHS thing, you threw me into the Wayback Machine, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So, Freddie, let me ask you this as a way to start this, because some of the misconceptions in here is this hyper local. What I mean by that is because I even had somebody that prefaced a question here by saying, we're in a rural, we got a big rural area, how does this play in? Should I not advertise in the local paper? So does it matter at all where you're based? And I know that's maybe sounds like a basic question, but I just want people to understand how this is sort of, I don't want to say measured yet, but just basically how this fits in the overall landscape.
For sure, yeah. So we have ran OTT campaigns in markets of all sizes, even markets 200 and up. So it does truly work in those areas that you kind of wonder, is newspaper the only way to reach these people? I think that's just because internet is now pretty widespread, and that's how this is transmitted. TV transmitted via the internet. So any market, I think it works.
Because this is one of those situations where it doesn't matter where you live, you can stream, and that's absolutely true. Do you have to have? I'm throwing this out to everybody, so anybody jump in. And this is another question that was really great. Do you have to have a real vocabulary and acumen for this to really get involved, or is it more simple than that? Or is there a level of understanding you have to have before you should really be dipping your toes in the water? And anybody can grab that question.
Jump in. This is easier than broadcast. There is literally less terminology than there is in broadcast when you start really getting down to it, because you're not targeting these huge swaths of things and understanding what portion of that huge swath you're getting. It's a one-to-one correlation. You are getting the person you're trying to target. It's so much easier to deal with than broadcast. That's my opinion, and I love OTT.
Betsy, any thoughts on
that? She's right. It is easier, but it's. I think the terms that Freddie went over earlier are good to know. I normally take notes, and I'm trying not to, so I'm glad this is recorded. But it's true. It's pretty simple. Who do you want to reach? There you go. I always tell people the difference between digital and traditional is traditional, you're buying the vehicle. Digital, you're buying the person. And so it finds the person for you. So that's kind of how I differentiate.
But Freddie, does this really compare to other digital channels, or is this its own breed of cat that you've got to look at differently?
So we actually run it a lot in conjunction with other digital campaigns too. So other line items and targeting aspects. But I think exactly what they just shared. There are so many terminologies and things that you can get caught up on, but if you remember what was just said, it's targeting the person. No matter what type of digital you're doing, you're not casting a wide net like with traditional TV anymore. Now you can really drill down and show your ads to people who have recently moved or who are in market for furniture or mattress, and get very specific in your geography.
So how do we know that? So how do you know that you're targeting that market? How are they putting that package together? How are these providers doing that?
Absolutely. So from the standpoint of a digital agency, what we're looking at, we're working with, dozens of ad servers that collect this information. So we've all heard of cookies, and we have when we go to a website, we're accepting that the website can drop cookies on us and start to track and follow us and kind of learn about our online behaviors. So as we're doing all of those things and we're looking at furniture and mattress and reading articles about the latest trends, we're falling into these behavioral buckets. So as a client, a furniture store, if you wanted to reach someone with a certain type of behavior, maybe they recently looked at home accessories or a specific brand of rug, all of these buckets are out there that we can dip into and reach people with those very specific behaviors.
So you can get very micro on this. You really can with OTT. It's not a big broad brush kind of a piece of advertising, right?
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, there are hundreds of ways to reach people.
So with that said, so Carrie, give us one of the things we're going to dig into here, and we might as well do it now, is there's been so many questions already about, so how do I know how to divvy up my marketing budget? You just said, I love it. It's easier than broadcast. So, look, we're just talking about ballpark figures here. We know there's no certainties here. So how do you do that? For everybody out there that's listening to this, that's like, how do I decide? Give us an idea what you've done and how you managed to slice the pie up.
And that's a really good question, because I think, as we got done with our 2022 planning, I know that Jerry and I looked at each other and said, I don't think we spent quite enough in OTT. I think there was more that we could have done here. It's a little scary to think about pulling money off of broadcast, but then again, when you go back to, if I run a spot in the evening news, maybe 4% of people watching it are my target audience. If I spent those same dollars in OTT, 100% are my audience. When you really stop and think about that, I don't think you can spend too much in OTT. I don't think there's a magic number, and I think it's mostly fear that keeps us from really going in with both feet. But I think the main points would be, make sure you've got a provider that you trust. Because there is no oversight, because there is no standardization of the measurements, and there's a couple of question marks out there. So just make sure you're working with a trusted provider, and then just hold them accountable. Make sure you're paying attention, just like you would with any other type of advertising. But in this case, unlike broadcast, you can pay attention and you can get some information.
And we'll go into measuring and performance in a little bit. So I know you kind of dabbled in that for a second, but Betsy, also, I'd like to get your take on that as well. How have you guys kind of decided where to put your advertising dollars?
It's kind of been, we started with trying to do about 30% digital out of my budget. And then from there, I tried really hard to figure out how much to do on OTT, and it wasn't really a scientific formula at all. I kind of buy them more like a TV. I guess I give them about what I'd give a TV station, which isn't, much to speak of, to be honest with you. But my issue is, and I know we're going to cover it later, but my issue is accountability and attribution. Well, I'm struggling with that. So I'm with the rest of your audience. I'm struggling with that. And once I feel like I really understand and know, I mean, it's kind of a hybrid, OTT. It's kind of like TV, and you can't measure it really well, but then it's also like digital. And I think those of us who've done digital, we expect it to deliver like digital. We look at our Google Analytics and it's not showing up, and so I'm very anxious to learn more and more about it. I'm kind of at the frustration stage instead of the, light bulb, this is great.
Well, I mean, then we got to get into this now. So Freddie, what are the issues with measuring? Why is that problematic, at least from the two other perspectives we have on this webinar?
Yeah, so honestly, what we found, in working with a lot of different providers and ad servers, it really depends on your partner. You have to have a partner that you can trust. A lot of media companies that are selling OTT or any type of video streaming, what they're actually doing is they're only serving ads on their own content, their own websites. So they're doing that for a couple different reasons: to lower the cost.
Okay.
When they do that, they're calling it OTT, but it's not really in the sense that those are not truly targeted ads. They kind of serve the ads like on a traditional cable TV spot, and that's it. We never know if they actually work. But there are some other ways that we can track. A lot of other services are out there that provide more measurability and accountability.
Mhm.
There is an OTT service now available from some providers. It's one that we have. You can actually track visits. After someone sees your OTT ad, we can then track and tell you if they step foot into your store. So that's a great way for accountability. Google Analytics was mentioned a minute ago, although sometimes Google doesn't play super nice with OTT and a lot of other digital. An increase in traffic would be a way to check and see if it's working. We also say to sometimes put in content that is unique and a message that's not being heard anywhere else. So that helps with
Sure.
accountability. Yeah, a lot of different things that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, there's kind
Problems, Freddie, that I've always been believed, and maybe I'm wrong, but is that people don't stop watching a 30-minute show in order to click through, which is why there's never any click-throughs. Is that, I mean, that's the inherent problem, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's not a lot of clicks for sure, like on other digital that we've come to expect. The only place that you could click would be on connected TV. And that's the other thing that I wanted to say though, connected TV is the spot that is considered premium inventory. So if you're buying OTT or that overhead umbrella and you're just kind of blasting your message out there and it's going to computers and mobile devices, that's not the premium inventory. You really need to be buying on connected TV where someone is in the mindset of sitting down and binge watching, the latest episode of their favorite series or whatever. So we find the best success when ads are served on connected TVs.
and just from a personal standpoint, that's the kind of viewing we do here is connected TV. We're not really likely to do it on a device. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. So Carrie, I'm going to drag you back into that. I didn't mean that to sound that terrible. I don't know why I use that terminology. So here's the thing. I'm hearing a buyer beware here. I'm hearing that not all OTT providers are created equal. Have you struggled? I thought I heard a little struggle in there with you. So have you found a good, we're not naming names here, but have you found a good provider, or how do you do that? Or how do you make sure that you're not connecting to somebody that's just not going to deliver what you need?
And that's a really good question. And that's, I think anybody who's talked to me for more than 5 minutes about this knows I call it the wild, wild west out there because it's a little difficult to navigate. And who's the good guys and who's the bad guys? It's a little, they're not wearing black and white and making it obvious like they do in the old Westerns, right? So I think you have to ask a lot of questions. And that's how I've uncovered some bad providers versus some good providers. I've definitely had, and I hate to pick on the media world, but Freddie opened that can of worms, so I'm just going to kind of jump into that with him. Where I find the biggest problem is with the media companies who know they're losing ground and they're selling this quote unquote OTT product. And like he said, they're not targeting people, they're targeting networks, or they're not targeting people, they're targeting time frames, or there's a lot of stuff going on. And so I think that's, like with anything that we're trying, ask a lot of questions and ask that question specifically, are you targeting people? And that would be a good start for any conversation there, because sometimes the answer is not there. But yeah, I have, we've managed to find a very, very good provider that we're very happy with. There's many of them out there. Freddie's one of them, of course, and then, other companies out there. But yeah, ask a lot of questions. Don't take anything on face value, just like you would with any other advertising program. These are big dollars that we're spending. Spend them
Right.
wisely.
How can you, and how can you, and I guess Freddie, this would be a question for you. How can you know besides just asking that question, I mean, it seems to me like you have to depend on somebody who does this. And when you talk about these media companies, you think they have the cachet to do it the right way. Is there a way to shop for this? I mean, Carrie mentioned a couple of questions, but what else would you suggest?
I think just being sure that they're not buying a network, like she was saying, they're buying the person. So you want to be sure that no matter where that person goes, no matter whether they're watching on Amazon or Apple TV, whatever it is, you're not buying the platform, you're buying the person. That's number one.
Okay, and then let me ask you this: because this is a question that came in that I thought was a good one. Do we have any statistics to know whether advertising on OTT versus broadcast or cable or whatever, is there any more likelihood of somebody actually watching it, and not doing the fast forward whip through? Can you talk about that, because that's a nuance that I think we need to discuss real quick.
Mhm.
Yeah, so a lot of digital agencies should be able to provide kind of a number as to how many people are watching your OTT spot all the way through. So they should be able to give you measurability at 25%, 50, 75, and 100, which is something we can't get, of course, with traditional or linear TV. So it makes it even more unique.
That to me is one of the, and I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's one of the nuances of this that I don't think most people know. Betsy, were you aware of that? Because I think that's, you're doing a great job here of not only being involved in it, but being very inquisitive too. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I thought with connected TV, you just, unlike watching YouTube, you didn't get the option of cutting it off early. I mean, you can't fast forward through a lot of that. You just have to watch it. So I wasn't aware that I could buy it based on skippable.
Mm-hmm. Right. It depends on the platform where it's being served. Yep. So each platform sets their own terms.
That's good to know.
There's another great takeaway. Carrie, something that you said a second ago sparked another one of the many questions here. How do rates compare between OTT, broadcast cable, et cetera, like that? What have you all found as far as the comparability there? Because I've got a lot of people asking questions about cost.
And that's one of those places where I think everybody, the biggest thing I can say on that would be, you're not buying points like you are on broadcast. You're not looking at 3.2 out of 100 is your target. With that 1-to-1, that 100%, nominally 100% targeting. You can't really compare them in an apples to apples way that way. They're not similar enough to do that. And same thing as comparing it with digital. And Betsy said earlier that this is sort of a hybrid, and I think she's exactly right. It like skirts that line between, what we've traditionally thought of as broadcast and what we have learned is digital. So it's not going to perform like your display ads and things like that either. It's a completely different animal. But yeah, rates can be all over the place. And, just to use like HBO Max as an example, I think they launched at $150 CPM. But the question is, do you need to be there? Because you can catch that customer on Hulu, you can catch her on Amazon, you can catch her on Tubi. You can, there's a whole lot of places where you can really capture that same customer, because we have to look at it so much differently than broadcast, because you don't have to buy the evening news. We can catch her watching silly animal tricks on Animal Planet on demand or something. There's other places we can catch her. So that's a big thing there too, is that we're not just trying to find the place where we can get the most viewers, because it's no longer a numbers game like that. We're finding one viewer. Where is she? And so that's my
so
two
this is
cents
kind of
there.
apples. This is kind of apples and oranges. Then you can't really directly correlate the two based on that setup as you've talked about. So I mean, we're not going to have really a definitive answer here, but you certainly have to educate yourself on what these different avenues deliver for the dollar to try to find a commonality. Freddie, is that a big problem that you see with a lot of people truly adopting OTT, is because of the fact that it is such a different animal, and maybe the numbers kind of scare people off?
I think the numbers scare people. I think anytime you start to talk CPM or cost per thousand, any of that, it's just another terminology that some people who aren't in the digital arena get scared off by, and they don't know if it's a fair number. But again, there are providers who are all over the scale. If it's super cheap, there's a reason why it's super cheap. And likewise, you know, like you were talking about, HBO launched and they were really expensive. You really need them to be a part of the mix because you can find that person somewhere else. So don't focus so much on buying the platform, really focus on buying the person.
Well, we have clearly touched a nerve here because a flood of new questions has come in. So let me throw this one out here, and I'll let Betsy, you can jump in first on this if you'd like. First question is, how does the panel feel about loss of control about program placement and provider mix, as well as limitations to frequency and reach?
You have to get past that because, again, you're not buying the vehicle, you're buying the person. And so you're supposed to just really, I understand that completely because it was hard, but you have to get past where you're running, because if you're showing up in, like she said, Tubi TV, which I've never even heard of, but I show up in there a lot. That's because my audience is there, you know, and so you have to trust the algorithm, I think. It's just it is a loss of control, but it is a trust factor too, also because it's hard to measure ROI. So I understand that completely, but you do have to get past that in order to trust the medium.
Okay. Here's another great question. It says, Freddie mentioned foot traffic measurement. How much merit does he give to that, since the match rate for devices in store, location services turned on, user interaction, et cetera, is only 10 to 15% at best? Freddie?
So we actually account for exactly what they said. Not everybody is going to have all of those things turned on. So we account for two numbers. One being the actual number, the people who come in and have all of those things, you know, access GPS, use internet while inside of the store, all of those things. And then we give a projected number too. So there's a hard actual number. We know this person jumped through 4 or 5 different hoops, but then there were probably more people where if your salesperson is a good salesperson and doing their job, that customer is not playing on their phone for us to be able to track them and know that they were in the store. So we give clients 2 numbers, the hard actual number that we know people jump through the hoops, and then another number 2.
Okay. One more question that came in, and then we'll get back to some of these others. This is terrific. So here's this is just more of an FYI. This viewer of the webinar said, just to point out that we're able to get what they refer to here as deterministic sales attribution through our current partner, and are seeing a minimum of a 29x ROI on CTV ad spend, on cable TV ad spend. Is that an outlier? Is that an exception, not the rule? Or what are some thoughts about that?
I think that makes sense. I would, you know, I'm just gonna like fill this in with a little bit of like personal experience. You know, I find myself, I watch about 90% of my viewing at this point is in the OTT space. And I watch a lot of Peacock, I'll say. And Peacock has done an enormously wonderful job. Their targeting is insane. But I find that when I'm watching Peacock versus when I switch to cable, I'm not offended by the commercials. Like, I enjoy the commercials. You know, I recently thought maybe I'll trade in my car, and guess what I'm being targeted with? Car ads. I have a cat. What am I targeted with? Chewy and cat food. And, you know, all of the commercials are so relevant that I find myself enjoying the commercials. Whereas when I switch to the Hallmark channel, because I'm a girl, I'm getting, you know, the Medicare commercials and the lawyers, and they drive me crazy. So when we talk about what's the difference between the two things, if you take nothing else out of this, the biggest thing is that your commercial is relevant to that viewer, and therefore your response is going to be exponentially higher.
And let's be fair here. The person that said that, I mean, there's nothing wrong with the 29x ROI on, you know, cable, satellite, broadcast, you know, all the connected TV channels. So there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think that any of you are saying kick that out and just do OTT. We are talking about a balance here, correct, Freddie? Is that? I want to make sure that I'm.
I think a balance for sure, but you know, 2020 was definitely the year where more households could be reached with streaming than traditional cable, and I think that's kind of a tipping point that we will never see go back.
So it's Okay, so it's maybe not an either or, but it's a balance issue. Is that really what we're saying here? And it's really, I mean, I'm hearing from Carrie in particular, I'm hearing a real change of attitude here. I mean, Betsy, you've got to really sort of, like you just said, this loss, you realize this loss of control in certain aspects.
Mhm.
You've got to really change your mindset if you're going to even dabble in OTT. I would
You
imagine. Is that
do.
fair?
That is fair. And the issue too with, I think Carrie's point was really well received about how the commercials aren't quite as annoying. I never really thought about that. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, you really have to figure out a lot of, here, this is one really good point I want to make. You have to know your own market, because I know about 4 years ago, my owner heard from another owner about OTT was the end all be all of existence, you know? And when I looked into it, my market is not an early adopter market. They don't cut the cord as fast as like somebody in Pencil, you know, in a large market. We're in the South. So I had to say to him, we can't just jump into it yet. We have to monitor how many people have cut the cord and try to keep a good balance between who's watching cable, who's watching broadcast, who's watching streaming, and not just jump in feet first, because we're going to be cutting out a lot of our audience. So my advice is just really knowing your own market and knowing how much they've adopted streaming, because it is still kind of the new shiny penny for a lot of people. At least in my market it is. But it's so much more inexpensive than cable. That's what makes it so appealing. And that's what made me finally decide this isn't going away. This is here. You know, this is a new thing. It's not one of those newfangled things that just end up running, you know, going away and you never hear about it again. This is something today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And by the way, before we continue, we've already hit the halfway mark, which is unbelievable. I want to just mention to people that are just joining us, we've got Freddie Wright, he's the digital director at Conquest Digital. We got Carrie Fletcher, director of marketing with Bears Furniture, and Betsy Tier, director of marketing for Muskelly. I think that's a fabulous point. And by the way, I mean, this is you can mark this as to Mark's obvious takeaway of the webinar. I mean, come on, knowing your market is the root of everything you do.
Mm-hmm.
Advertising and marketing. I mean, so you're just basically saying, don't forget the basics, which I think is a brilliant thing to say, and I think it's positive. All right, so now we get into these. So people have a lot of really specific questions, and I don't know if there's answers to these. We're going to give it a try. So, what would you say are the best recommended streaming services that seem to do well for furniture customers, furniture buyers? Are there streaming services that are more conducive to our sector than others? Let's throw that one out there. Freddie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, again, I'll first say, don't get so hung up on the provider or the service. Go after the person. If it's a good digital provider, a good OTT partner, they should be able to get your ad on whatever platform that person is going to.
Okay, I'm going to pause switch there for a second. You're doing a very good job of being diplomatic, and I'm going to stop you right there.
That was good.
So here's the question. Let me re-ask the question. Are there services, no matter who your OTT provider is, that are more conducive to the furniture buyer? Are we finding, what they're asking are we finding there's generally speaking more furniture buyers watching Netflix or Prime or whatever? Do we know any, or is that just not even answerable?
So a couple different things. We, as a digital agency, most digital agencies should have access to this to be able to provide projections. So going back to what Betsy was talking about and knowing the market, although we can't show you how many times each person's going to see the ads and things like that, projections are available. So looking at your geography, you can kind of figure out how many impressions you get and how much reach you would have. But then also, second thing I would say is Amazon offers a good service. So Amazon, you can do a custom audience match. So let's go with the age-old, somebody came in and bought a mattress 7 years ago, and it's time for them to buy a new mattress now. So you provide to Amazon or your digital provider a list of those people who bought a mattress 7 years ago. They do an address match, only serve ads to those people. And then from there, a couple of different things. You can do a match back report to see, at the end of the month, of those people whose ads were served to them, how many came in and bought a mattress. But then also Amazon OTT does track conversions on a website. So that is unique. So Amazon they have a good product.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And thank you for letting me drag you into there. maybe kicking and screaming, I'm not sure. Let me ask Carrie, let me ask you that question. Have you seen, do you have any that you feel are any more conducive? And again, these are just, I know this is kind of feel and that kind of thing, but you know, other retailers are just curious.
You know, and that it is a good question, and I think it's a question that any of us playing in this space have had to stop and think about. And like we said earlier, you know, HBO Max, great platform, lots of people love it, you know, but huge cost, do we need to be on it? I think that's the driving question on a lot of things. You know, I mean, Hulu is, you know, a top provider. It's one of the only ones in the top provider list that is commercial. But again, their CPMs are pretty darn high. Do we need to be there? I mean, obviously furniture buyers are on Discovery. You know, they're watching Discovery, they're watching Discovery Plus, all those home shows, all, you know, we
There you
know
go.
that. However, if Discovery Plus all of a sudden started charging $200 CPM to the furniture industry because of that, are we losing the ability to target that customer? No. Again, there's 1,000 other places to catch her. So I think, again, it's the same thing that Freddie said and that Betsy has said. You know, we can't get hung up on the platform. You're buying people. You know, where is she? Let your provider find her and get a provider that you trust.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And I don't feel like we're so much beating a dead horse here on that aspect of it. I think it just is, we're really talking about a reconditioning, a new mindset in you know, in a lot of ways. Before I move on, Betsy, do you have any thoughts or comments about that as well, as far as where you've seen maybe more success than other streaming services?
That's another area you really kind of have to give up control on, because if I don't watch Tubby TV, I think nobody's watching it that I want to reach. But then it ends up, you know, I see things there, and you know, I watch a lot of Hulu, and that's my streaming service too. So I like seeing a lot more Hulu on there. But then it's like, it's like Carrie said, their cost per 1,000 is high, and do I really need to pay that if I can reach the same person elsewhere? So it kind of, in a way, if you come from a traditional background like I do, it does kind of blow your mind a little bit, but you just have to think through it. I think having a good quality dashboard is extremely important. Your OTT provider needs to give you a strong dashboard. And not only do you look at where you're landing, but you really need to pay attention to the geography too. My provider was somehow not placing anything in my biggest zip code, and he swore I told him not to, and I'm like, why would I tell you that? So I kicked myself because I didn't check it. You know, I should have checked it sooner.
And let's really put an exclamation point on this, because it keeps bleeding through on everything we're talking about. You've got to get a good trusted provider. So maybe the number one thing here is to make sure that you're shopping for a provider that can, as you guys have already talked about, can really go at it, you know, viewer by viewer, and can really give you some responsive performance indicators, something. You got to start there, because it sounds to me like you're gonna, if you have to, and you would keep saying it, lose control. And you got a lot of people, you know, watching this, you're going, but I don't want to lose control. But you have to trust, right? And so you got to trust somebody that you can depend on. No, very.
I'll add there, you definitely have to trust, but I'll go off of something that Betsy just said. Any good provider should give you a dashboard. This should not be smoke and mirrors. So although you are giving up control of who you're reaching and the frequency and those types of things, you should have access to a dashboard to see exactly what they're doing at any given time. And they should be going through reporting with you. They should be able to tell you the geography, the number of impressions served in that geography, you know, how much percentage of the spot they actually consumed. All of those things should be a part of that dashboard. So as you're shopping, keep that in mind.
Great questions that came through prior to and now have been sparked by our actual conversation today. And I'm going to start with Carrie on this one. Do you have to provide, or should you provide, any different content for OTT versus connected TV? Is there a difference? Is it the same? Is that even a nuance? There's been a lot of questions about that. So I think people are wondering if you have to contour the message differently.
You know, and that's a really good question, and it's one that I don't know even I've settled on a solution to yet. You know, I mean, when we're talking about YouTube, we know that you have to do some very specific creative because of the skippability of it. You know, when you're talking about most OTT, you know, true OTT and CTV products, the only way to actually skip an ad is to turn off your TV. So that's not as much of a factor, and that's what drives that question, I think, in most of the digital spaces is, you know, what are we, how is our consumer behavior during this, and what are their options? So so no, if you're placed properly, if you're targeting properly and not over targeting, I think you can still stay on a promotional schedule, you know, do your evergreen mixes, do what you do on traditional broadcast. That's my opinion. I'm really curious to know what Freddie and Betsy have to say about that.
Go for it.
I do the same thing, Carrie. I typically target the same, my traffic on one is almost the same as my traffic on another.
So your
I do use
messaging doesn't change, Betsy?
No. If it's,
Okay.
you know, if it basically reflects the prevailing sale and a brand mix, which is what I typically do. Now, one of the things I've started doing it with OTT, and I think this is a really good practice because it's worked really well for me, is in some outer markets that I don't normally target because, you know, the DMA is too expensive to buy traditionally. I've started doing it with OTT, and I think that's a real advantage of that vehicle is that it's inexpensive and you can still advertise on, you know, take TV as we call it, but it's a cheaper way to go about it. And I've been like just running some schedules in some outer markets and really pushing brand to introduce myself. So, you know, in that regard, and my sales have improved. So, you know, people are driving long distances to come to our store, which is impressive to me that they're doing that. So I think that's one way to really use it.
Well, Freddie, what's the best practice? Is it just, you know, you can run with the same content on both, or do you have a different recommendation?
So 95% of our clients definitely run with both, same content, both places. From my seat though, I'll share a couple of different previews. QR codes are coming this year. So your digital agency should be able to allow you to start putting a QR code in your OTT spot, which will help with trackability, but then that also gives you some different content. And then also, we always like to run a couple of different spots at the same time and do the old A/B test, see which one is getting the most engagement and the most clicks on CTV. So I would encourage that too.
Do you know what I think QR codes have done to some people? And I'm going to just say me, is that I love them, first of all. You know, I mean, and we've become, isn't it funny that they were sort of, you know, not the thing until the pandemic, and then you know, when you go in places, nobody prints menus anymore, so you got to do that, so you got to use it. It causes me to pause what I'm watching because I got to struggle to get my phone just to grab the QR code. So it's sneaky that it actually makes me sort of stop where I'm at and really pay attention to it. So I'm just throwing that out there as one very impressionable buyer. There's more questions that have come in, and this one is really very granular, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. The question is this: what is the best medium to target a consumer who either meets a certain credit criteria or job sector? This is something that's got, you know, as a retailer, it's got a lot of people that come from different categories. Or in this case, obviously, when they talk about credit criteria, those may be more likely to be approved. So is there a best medium to target consumers that fit certain criterias, or is that something that's a conversation for a different day?
So I'm going to go back to that umbrella that we started with in the beginning. So OTT is that umbrella. We'll duplicate that to reach that person. So that person, you know, is the umbrella, the person with the decent credit score or credit score of X. Underneath that would be all of your providers. We're buying the umbrella. We're not buying down here. So your digital provider should be able to buy that umbrella, and then everyone, no matter where that person goes, they should be able to reach them. So it shouldn't be a discussion of which is the best provider. It should be, you know, that person, no matter where they go.
Who are you targeting? Okay. And again, you know, that answer is another example. You got to change your mindset. This is not the same as these other channels are. With that in mind, is there any way to, have we noticed any demographic changes as to who's likely to respond to OTT? Are we seeing any trends related to any of that?
It's becoming everybody, don't you think, Freddie? I mean, it started off as being cord cutters and cord shavers, and I was part of that early adoption list. But I mean, if you can talk to a 90-year-old man at this point, and he's going to tell you, "Oh yeah, I watch everything on streaming." There's no longer like a segment where it was a younger thing or a millennial thing, or that's gone by the wayside. OTT is everybody.
So with that said, then that means, getting back to what we just talked about, Freddie, that means that there's no one that you want to target that is not reachable through OTT, or at least a segment of that. Fair enough to say that?
I think so. I think there are just so many behavioral buckets that we can tap into. And I think the last number that I saw was 80% of adults watch video using a connected TV at least once a week. So, I mean, that's the majority of our world.
Can you give that one more time? Because I missed the first part of that response.
Sure. 80% of adults are watching video on a connected TV device at least once a week. 80%.
Is that higher than television?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Freddie, do you consider connected, when you say 80% are watching on connected TV, do you consider like somebody watching YouTube videos? Is that part of the connected TV world that you're talking about?
No, not of that. That would be separate.
Okay.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. This is, again, I think you understand where these questions are coming from, as people are trying to get their arms around this.
I have to say, I tried to use I tried to do a QR code and I got nothing. It just didn't work for me. Now, again, I'm in the South, so we're late adopters, but I was so proud of it. I worked so hard to get the spot ready and I got nothing. Hopefully that will change in the future, but that's just my experience with QR codes.
Yeah, so they teased us with that, and they've said that software is coming. We don't know what that necessarily means yet, so I don't know if it's just blipping it on the screen or somehow embedding it. Don't really know yet.
Mm-hmm.
So here's another question. What percentage of that connected TV viewer then is watching ad-supported content?
Great. Yes, I'm gonna. So another stat that I have here that I just jotted down, 58% of streaming adults said they use free streaming platforms and view ads. So these, by the way, are coming from a Media Post study, these stats that I have. And then another interesting one that we have is 83% of US TV households have at least one connected TV. So big numbers.
Yeah, this is, you've clearly struck a vein here, because we have some. So this is just to reiterate: 58% of adults are watching ad-supported content on a connected device. Is that fair?
Yes, free streaming platforms and viewing ads. Yes.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I have to tell you, we just have so many people that are popping these questions in, because this is just absolutely fantastic that we're getting that way. So let me, I'm kind of wanting to go about three different directions here. So before we leave the demographic piece, I know that you said everybody is, but so how do you take the conventional data? We know what when you know what the typical furniture buyer looks like, or at least in your area, you get that demo. How do you blend these things together then, so that even though you're going after quote unquote the person, how do you build the campaign to make sure that you're covering key demographics that you're looking to connect with?
I think there are just so many different behavioral buckets out there. So yes, you're targeting that same traditional customer that you see walk in your door. They've shown behaviors that we know they're in market for furniture or mattress. But then, like Betsy was saying, know your market. So if you know your consumers watch a very specific TV show, target fans of that TV show. Don't only buy ads running on traditional cable during that. You want to reach those people when they're streaming it after the fact. So no matter whether they're watching the show rebroadcast or streaming on that network's app, you can layer in things like fans of a specific show or fans who like this type of movie. There's so many different ways to be creative.
Any other thoughts about that, either Carrie or Betsy?
No, I just think that was a really good way to put that. In addition to doing that whole holistic targeting where you're saying, I want females 35 to 54 with this income range, blah, blah, blah. You want to be cautious not to over target to the point that you're not prospecting anymore, because part of the glory of what we do on things like linear television is, yes, we know 3.6% of whatever show is our audience. Well, the 97% that's not has some value, and that's where we get some prospecting. So in doing what Freddie's saying, where we not only do our, our specific targeting based on knowing our market, we, buy a show. If we know that the Property Brothers is something that really resonates with our customers, we carry the brand for that reason, whatever it is, then maybe buy Property Brothers as well and do a wider net during that. That's great advice, Freddie. I've never thought of that. That's really great.
Thank you. And another thing that I'll add too is a good digital provider should also have AI or artificial intelligence as part of your campaign. So you can sit here and come up with that perfect avatar or that perfect persona of your next customer, but you're going to forget about people. You're going to forget about people who maybe just moved to the market that you haven't necessarily included in that persona. So artificial intelligence, we kind of explain it as the broom that comes along and sweeps up the people we've forgotten about. So artificial intelligence can help with that puzzle piece as well.
And again, I think the reason these questions are coming, the one thread through so many of these questions is this is just a different mindset. Because, Carrie, what you just described as far as how you use the demographical targeting information, you have to just kind of look at it a little bit differently, and approach it differently. So that's why this is such a valuable conversation, because it is truly an important area, but it's a mindset change. So here's another good question I'll toss out, and anybody, so I feel like a game show. This is a toss-up question, so please jump in, hit your buzzers. So overall, based on all of your experiences here, what specific media types are giving the highest conversion rate right now for furniture? Do we know what the conversion rates are for, let's just say, the typical cable or satellite versus how these people are getting it on their connected devices versus stream? I mean, you tell me. Do we know? Are we able to know that information?
To be honest with you, I don't trust it. I don't know what it is, and I wish I could know. That's the missing piece for me with OTT. What's the conversion? How valuable really is it? And I know there's a lot of ways that people say, oh, you can do this or you can do this. And even the matchbacks that Freddie talked about. I have a real problem with matchbacks because I advertise in so many different vehicles. And just because I showed up on one show in OTT and they came in my store, I just can't buy the fact that drove them in, because I'm on so many different vehicles. So I'm interested in the answer. I don't have it, but I'd love to know it.
And I agree with you, Betsy. There's so much that's in the wind, but I think there's so much that's always been in the wind. We've all been spending a ton of money on broadcast, radio, news, types of things. We've never known how much it brings in. Why all of a sudden, because this is OTT, do we expect a finite answer? And the other thing is we're brick and mortar. We're brick and mortar. We're not heavy e-commerce. We're not Wayfair, thank God. But we are, sorry, anybody out there who is. But we don't have that direct conversion number that we can track that customer journey right through. Sometimes we have to trust it's working because the numbers are in line, and that's where I land.
And Carrie, I can tell you why we expect it, because it's digital.
Yes,
and we
I know.
think, that's what I mean when I said it's a hybrid. It's digital. It's supposed to tell us that, but it doesn't. So you have to have an element of faith in it, just like you do with television, until I can figure out a way. And I struggle with this all the time. That's why I haven't put any more money into it. I would love to know. I'd love to have a path to it on my life.
All right, Freddie. You've been teed up here because we have. Think about this for a minute. We're talking about something top of mind, critically important to help grow your business, and we have words like, we don't trust it. You have to give up control. We really don't know. It's like, I'm sure there's people listening. It's like, going, are you kidding me? Right? In this digital age, I mean, so Freddie, is conversion tracking even anything that's possible? Should you in this element of OTT, et cetera, or should
So I
we
think
really be focusing on that?
when we say conversions, I think about website conversions from my seat. You know, it's always been hard to track the person through the door. And you could ask the person who came through the door, like Betsy said a minute ago, I'm doing OTT, I'm doing cable, I'm doing billboards. You could ask them, where did you see the ad? And they could say, oh, I saw it on Facebook. You're not running.
Not on Facebook.
Right. So there's never really a true way to track that there. But when I think about website conversions, that is one of the issues. It's like running a TV commercial. You can't necessarily click on that TV commercial. There are some houses that have smart TVs that allow that. But when you're watching TV, the likelihood of you stopping and clicking and doing all that, it's just not going to happen. So the traditional digital conversion isn't really something that's trackable. I'll go back to Amazon. The Amazon OTT is something that we can track conversions on your website with. That is a tier that they offer. But that really is about it as far as tracking that traditional conversion.
And the last webinar, when we talked about in the context of e-com, there's also 10 different definitions of conversion. You know, what are you trying to convert? It's not, I think when you hear it generically like that thrown out, it's sale. How are we gonna make the sale kind of a situation? So, but I get it, get it completely. There have been a myriad of takeaways in this hour that we've spent. As we wind down here, I just want to make sure that I'm hitting the high points, and correct me if I'm wrong. But here are the things that have come through loud and clear. Number one, you need to shop for your OTT provider and make sure that they're performing well, that they can deliver what it is you feel you're buying, and not just be plugging you into some program that might not work out. So that's number one. That provider is really, really key. Setting your expectations, I think, is number two. This gets into what Betsy talked about, as far as you have to realize that, yes, there's a lot of this that we just have to trust. However, to Carrie's point, we also know that this is where people are going. And if you're not in the game where we know and how they're watching and viewing things, then you do that at your own risk. Is that, Carrie, did I paraphrase that well enough for you?
Sure, absolutely.
Don't get sticker shock, because it's a different spend than other mediums. And so just make sure that you understand more about what it is you're buying. I think that's great. If they don't provide you a dashboard, Freddie said, leave, go out the door the other direction. That you have to have that. And really, it just is, know your market and just learn more about these different services and what these services provide. Because to your targeting, the targeting comment earlier, you got to know on that particular platform, that streaming service, what's on their, what's in their their laundry list of what they carry. They might have a lot of programming that just doesn't fit what you're trying to do. How did I do? Was that close enough?
I think that's good. Yes.
Huge amount of takeaways here. So first and foremost, before I thank you guys, I want to mention a couple of things. We are coming up just in 2 days to the Las Vegas furniture market, and we're starting now to get back in the swing a little bit more. If anyone who's watching this is going to be in Las Vegas, we will be there, Building B, the one right dead smack in the middle, and we're on the 10th floor in 1050. That's where our resource center is, and we've got a ton of phenomenal seminars. If you like this webinar, there's going to be a lot of in-person things we can do. Plus, you can also check the exhibitor list to see all of the wonderful partners we have that are in there. You see those addresses there, myhfa.org/Vegas-seminars for the seminars, and you see the market information there as well. And all of these partners we have there are there to serve our members. There's value in membership and power in membership, and not just incredible, webinars and seminars and things of that sort, but so many other benefits. And I think we've got some members on this particular webinar who would be my amen section here when I say that. But myhfa.org/join is the way that you can join us. But for the moment, I got to say a big thank you. Freddie Wright, Digital Director for Conquest Digital Solutions. Freddie, thank you for bringing the expertise to this conversation. I think you've helped to really clear up a lot of misconceptions and also really kind of cut through a lot of the confusion. I thank you for that. Carrie Fletcher, Director of Marketing for Bears, you also gave such great insights in how you've been managing through this. And Betsy Tabor, Director of Marketing for Miskelly. I love the fact this is one of the first times we've had a panelist who is expert in many ways on dealing with this, who came here like a viewer of the webinar to really ask and get a lot of questions. And I think you really helped to really bring a lot of the context to everything we're doing. So thank you, my friends. I appreciate that. For everybody else, I hope to see you in Las Vegas. If you're there, please do come and visit. But as always, we wish you good health, great sales, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time. I'm Mark Schumacher. Take care.
Bye-bye.